the food that we eat has to be turned into this liquid substance, which is going to build our plasma, then it builds our blood, then it builds our muscle, then our fat, then our bone, then our nervous system, our reproductive tissue. And at the 40-day mark, it builds this thing called ojas, which is our immune system. So there is a key between digestion and immunity.
Well, hello and welcome to the Finding Equilibrium show. I'm delighted to be here, delighted that you're here, and delighted that my guest today is Eleni Tsikrikas. I've been practicing that one. So, Eleni, I've known Eleni for a while now, and Eleni is an Ayurvedic practitioner and an educator, but more than that, she has a true passion for health and wholeness. And this is something that we share, and I was very keen to bring Eleni onto the podcast today to share some of her knowledge and her expertise. So welcome, Eleni. How are you today?
I'm really well, Lawrence. I'm excited to be here and share my love for Ayurveda.
So maybe the very first question, given that a lot of people won't be familiar with your work, is to understand your journey. I mean, how did you become an Ayurvedic practitioner and educator, and where did that all start from? I'd love to learn a little bit about your backstory.
It's interesting. I was thinking about that this morning. Well, I've always been fascinated by health, and I picked up my first Ayurveda book by Deepak Chopra, and I was traveling in London, and that was in the 90s. And I didn't understand anything, but it was my foray into it. My beginning was yoga. I was fascinated by yoga, and like everyone else, I was fascinated by asana, which is the physical postures, and I perfected them, and I did teacher training courses and kind of heard about this thing, Ayurveda. And really the thing that got me into Ayurveda is competition with my husband. He was a yogi, he traveled to India, and I moved to the United States, and I thought, I cannot compete with this man because he was better than me. And so he was the one who actually said, Ayurveda, and I've always wanted to study it, and what do you think? And I just took the opportunity because I had the time. And as he says, I walked into my first class, my first weekend, and I realized that I'd come home. I just went, I have been looking for this my entire life. And so I was hooked. I was hooked in 2005. I started school in California, and I've never looked back. And it's just been, it just keeps revealing itself to me. There's a saying in yoga where they say that when you're in relationship with something, so the very thing that you're in relationship with, it reflects back at you and changes you, but it keeps revealing itself to you. And I would say that Ayurveda is one of my loves. It's amazing as far as I'm concerned. So that's my brief journey. and then it's just opened up this door of what is health. Why do people heal? Why do some people heal? Why does others not heal? But it's expanded my understanding of it and turned it into this holism, that health is not just physical, but it's, mental, emotional, spiritual. And that's the journey that I'm on now, which I'm excited about.
That's amazing. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
That. So for people who are not familiar with the term Ayurveda, I'd love you to just share a little bit about what it is and the background and how it really helps people to be healthy.
Yeah. Look, the technical, people will say it's called the science of life. So that's the translation that we get from the Indians, the science of life. And then you have to look at obviously we all know what life means, but what does science mean? And the easiest way that I can describe it is that it's both teachings and practices that are geared towards living a long, healthy life. The importance about Ayurveda is that it's individual. So it says what works for one person may not work for someone else. I mean, we're all human beings and we have things in common, but it's really about longevity and health. And I would say personal responsibility. And this is a really important concept because personal responsibility is not an onerous thing, but, you know, again, the yogis talk about like, what are the semantics of a word? Responsibility has within it respond. And so what Ayurveda does is it places the responsibility on each individual to co-create their health. So, you know, we all get sick. You get a cold, so Ayurveda goes, look, you didn't cause it. You know, there's nothing wrong with you. You didn't create it, but you have a responsibility to it. And so it's this idea of responding to, you know, changes that happen in our lives, whether it's, you know, illness, because health is not static. That's the other thing. And I'll come back to that in a minute. And when we respond to something, when we take action, then we become empowered because we co-create our health. So that's what the science of life is. It's like health isn't something that you just get and it's this end result of something, but life means that it's my daily practices, my daily habits, and Ayurveda is big on daily practices and habits. They have a stabilizing, they play a stabilizing role, or they have a stabilizing nature, which allows us to stay healthy most of the time.
I love that. And I've heard you refer to Ayurveda as the people's medicine, and that term really resonated with me personally. And I'd love you to kind of expand on that, because I think I know what you mean. It kind of builds on this word responsibility.
And you know, so it's not mine. I'm you know, one of my teachers, KP Khalsa, talked about this. So if you think about people's medicine, what that means is that it's something that people can do, as opposed to doctor, which is only a special group of people can perform that. So people's medicine means things that normal, everyday human beings, us, can do, things that we can practice. So again, you know, it's like, well, what do we do every day? Well, we all, you know, we can exercise in a particular way. We can, you know, Ayurveda talks about breathing in a particular way. We can do, you know, yoga being Ayurveda sister science. So we move our body. We breathe in a certain way. We might meditate. We eat particular foods. So we eat seasonally. We take herbs. We do daily practices. That's what people's medicine is, that we take care of our body, mind, and spirit.
Okay. No, that's great. So it's a very empowering approach to life.
Don't you think it's empowering, but it's also practical. It takes health out from, you know, the up here and says, no, look, I play a role, just like I co-create my life, and I play a role in my health. And so, you know, I think we have to be careful not to get rigid around it, because rigidity doesn't work for anyone, but it's just this idea that we're continuously things don't happen external from us. So people's medicine, just like, you know, I don't know, what do people do? Democracy, we participate. Democracy is something that people participate in. People's medicine is something that we each participate in. And it's through that participation, through the practices that we do, you know, everyone exercises, like we all brush our teeth every day, you know, when we, you know, most of us have a shower every day. So that's participation. That's what people's medicine is.
I love that. I'd love to dig a little bit deeper into some of these practices and habits, because they can be quite different. And maybe if we pick a big one, which I know a lot of people get very confused about, which is around food and nutrition and digestion. I know Ayurveda puts a big emphasis on digestion as well as nutrition, but the actual philosophy is quite different to what we're accustomed to in the West. And I'd love you to just outline how it differs.
Well, I'm fascinated by food because I love to eat. So, and I love to cook. And I get excited about food. Look, first of all, this is an energetic system of medicine, and I can explain energy. You know, Ayurveda talks about this idea that everything that exists in the material world is made up of these certain components, these certain elements. And those same elements we are made up of those two. So there's the macro and the micro. And so what Ayurveda says is that food is made up of certain energies. So for an example, if I asked you, we have these 10 pairs of opposite qualities, and I'm speaking a foreign language, I understand that, but we're going to go simple and say foods can be heavy or light, foods can be cold or hot, foods can be dry or moist. So we'll just stay there. And so the idea is that if I understand who I am, so if I know that I tend to run heavy, then if I eat a lot of heavy foods, so what are heavy foods? Well, potatoes can be heavy, and pumpkin can be heavy, and pasta can be heavy, and bread can be heavy, and cheese can be heavy. I think I just listed all my favorite foods. Now, if I consume, so Ayurveda has a principle that things of a similar nature increase in the person and things of an opposite nature decrease. So if I know that I run heavy and my diet consists of pasta and bread and cheese all the time, then that's going to increase those qualities in me. If I eat so if I pick lighter grains, if I eat cheese like I do, occasionally, then when I'm eating more vegetables and a lighter diet, then I balance out my dosha. So we have to go back to this idea of there are doshas. That's what people are. We talk about 3 doshas, and people are made up of certain doshas. The doshas are made up of these things called elements. This is our categorizing system. Elements range from light to heavy. So we talk about space and wind and fire and water and earth. Just stay with me for a minute. I know it's complex. And food. So these elements, these combinations of elements make up the human system. These combination of elements make up foods. So for example, lettuce is considered to be light and cold. Potato is considered to be heavy and slightly kind of drying. Bread is considered to be heavy. Chilies are considered to be hot. Avocados are heavy. So it's this idea of looking at the person and looking at the nature of the food. So what that means is there's no one size fits all. So we've been conditioned into, so I'm thinking of all the different fads that have come across in the last few years. Several years ago, it was like everyone fat, everyone coconut oil, it's good for you. And so we have a one size fits all mentality that we've inherited, but we also have a symptom-based mentality that we've inherited. Do this for that. And Ayurveda looks at, what are the long-term effects of eating a particular way? Not the short term, but the long term. So if I eat a stodgy diet, and it makes me feel stodgy. So I think we know what just a heavy diet. Then I know, for example, that I haven't given meat up totally, but I learned at a very early age that meat and I don't work well together. I just cannot digest it. It sits in my stomach for a really long period of time. So the best way, and so I'm not going to demonize meat. I'm just going to say that I know that it doesn't work for me, so I have it occasionally. And that means that and so then there's all these other, I'm like, okay, that's out. What are all these other foods that I can eat? So it's this idea of, again, so let me go back. When we say people's medicine, there has to be a level of awareness, a level of consciousness where you start to notice what works for you and what doesn't work for you. And when things don't work for you, generally Ayurveda says that your body's going to respond with digestive symptoms. And those digestive symptoms are going to be mild and moderate. So you might get gassy, you might feel bloated, you might fall asleep, you might feel heavy. Well, that's the body whispering to you and saying, hey, this isn't working for us. So we need to either combine it, do a different combination, eat less, give it up altogether, etc. So then it's not an ideology of like, veganism, vegetarianism, meat eating. It's not about, Atkins diet, blood diet. It's just like, what works for me and how can I eat in a way that supports my health and well-being?
I love that. I love that. So what I hear you say, really, if you're going to break it down, because to me,
simplify it, Lawrence. Simplify it for me.
It's very intuitive, because what you're saying is if we understand ourselves as individuals, there's no two people that are exactly the same. then of course you can listen to your body when you eat something, and if your body responds well, then chances are that's positive for you. But also tapping into, if your body is cold, then naturally you want something hot. Like you wouldn't logically be eating ice cream in the winter.
We talked about this the other day, didn't we? I'm just like, I don't understand how that simple thing. So it's not just only your body, but remember that the entry point is seasonality, and it's winter now. Okay, we might have mild winters. It's been cold. It's been wet. Everything's soggy. It doesn't make sense to eat cold, soggy food. Because again, Ayurveda is this nature. It's a nature-bound medicine system of medicine. Sorry. And so what that means is that, remember I said macrocosm, microcosm. We pay attention to the seasons, and then Ayurveda says that look, certain foods grow during a particular season, and those foods are best for everyone to eat in different amounts. And then depending on who you are, if you tend to run thin and dry and cold, then you're going to have an oilier, heavier diet. And if you run hot, you might have a hot and oily, and I'm just giving like examples of general examples, then your diet's going to be heavier, but you don't want as much oil. And so it's this idea that, we live in a world where we have so much convenience, and everything's kind of been truncated into, we kind of eat everything 24/7, 365 days a year. And if we just start to pay attention to seasonality. So for example, right now in winter, if you said to me, what is one thing for people to do? I would say, don't eat anything cold. Everything needs to be cooked. Everything needs to be warm. And then some people are going to spice up their food because it's going to get their digestion moving. And other people are going to add more oil. But you have to work that out for yourself.
That makes perfect sense. So it's it is very logical and very intuitive, that's
what I love about it. And it's simple. It's actually, you know that the most, I was going to say the most important thing, the most kind of jaw-dropping things are always the simplest. It's really, really simple. And I'm attracted to it because it's really, really logical. It's a lot of logic behind it. A lot of wisdom is logic, I think.
No, I completely agree. And I think the other point that you raise is, I like this idea of nature-based form of medicine. Yeah. And it makes you realize, and I think perhaps in the West, we've become further removed. We almost see ourselves as separate from nature rather than as part of nature. And I guess if you're much more in tune with the natural cycles and the seasons, then that will help you go with the flow, so to speak, rather than actually fight against it and get ill. I want to pick up on one of the points as well, in terms of, so we've talked about food, but I know cleansing is a big part of Ayurveda, and I guess here in the West, we often think about a detox as like a potion or something we take, a liver detox, or quite a harsh form of fasting. And I'd love to understand from you the way Ayurveda sees cleansing. Is it something which is considered important as part of of life?
I think so. It's extremely important. And again, you go back to the cycles of nature. So what Ayurveda says is that everything is cyclical. Everything is cyclical. Everything is continuously changing. So if we look at the seasons, we notice, again, like just the typical ones, like if we go from summer where it's hot, and you couldn't imagine, like if I said to you right now, like it's somewhere it's, 25, 30 degrees, it's difficult to imagine. But what Ayurveda says is that at the junction of each season, this is a good time to do some cleansing. Now, why is that? First of all, Ayurveda considers the digestive tract to be the master system of the body. So what that means is that every time we eat, this is why food is important. Your body has to break down that food into a substance that creates the structures of your body, that creates the tissues of your body. And so there are 7 tissues in the body, And Ayurveda says that it takes 5 days for each tissue to be formed. The first one is plasma. So the food that we eat has to be turned into this liquid substance, which is going to build our plasma, then it builds our blood, then it builds our muscle, then our fat, then our bone, then our nervous system, our reproductive tissue. And at the 40-day mark, it builds this thing called ojas, which is our immune system. So there is a key between digestion and immunity. And so what happens is, think about, like, because of stress and the way that we live our lives, and, we all eat the wrong foods and we don't sleep enough, the digestive system gets overworked. And so that's number one. It gets overworked. So its components may not be working properly. Things get sluggish over a period of time. And then we have toxins. So we have all of these external toxins that we are being exposed to. The body has to digest those. So Ayurveda suggests that at the juncture of each season, there's a 2-week period. It's a really good time to purify the body. Now, the word purification is big in both yoga and Ayurveda, and there is always a spectrum when it comes to purification. On one end is super strong purification. That is called panchakarma, and that's best done at a clinic where you have doctors and you're being supervised. But effectively what we're doing, and then there's the stuff that we can do. Remember people's medicine that we can do at home. And what that entails is eating a plant-based diet for a period of time. This and the food that we normally eat that's associated with cleansing is khichdi. And so it's like a rice porridge. And again, there are many, many variations. And so you eat this for a period of time. You add herbs that support your Agni, which is your digestive fire, and herbs that support the body removing toxins. And that over a period of time, you're giving your digestive tract a break. You're actually eating a complete protein and you're gently detoxifying the body. So it's a reset. Yeah. And then you go back to eating whatever normally is for you. You transition back. That's in the simplest way that I can put cleansing. So the other thing I think that's really important to remember is that food is medicine. So Ayurveda says first medicine is food. That is the first medicine that we have. And we're using, when we do a cleanse, I know that in the West we think about cleansers and detoxing, but really what we're doing is we're utilizing food as medicine to support the detoxification of the body. And Ayurveda places great emphasis on doing things gently. We have this word called sattvic. We want to do things in a moderate way, because if you move the body too fast, too quick, you're going to create some kind of a derangement. And then within the cleansing, as I said, like what you can do at home, there are aspects where you can make it stronger and stronger and stronger. But the first step is eating khichdi for a period of time.
Love that. Okay, so I love this concept. Food is medicine. So we exist.
First medicine. First
medicine. We exist in the world. We're attracting toxicity into our bodies, and that's just a fact. So we have to have a process of actually getting rid of some of those toxins. And if we think about food as a source of cleansing, so it comes back to simplifying, doesn't it? Because what you described is you're eating
simplifying.
Simple food that allows the body to reset. I love that. I think that's great. I want to ask you a little bit more. You've mentioned herbs, and I know a lot of people can get very confused about herbs because there's so many. I mean, there's Ayurvedic herbs, and I know you're also a Western herbalist. But how do you use herbs in conjunction with food for someone who is looking to, to find balance in their life? I mean, what is the role of herbs? I'd love your perspective.
So much to say, so much to say. Well, first I'm going to start and say that the medicine's in the kitchen. So you would be surprised at the power of herbs, to heal. So herbs are both, I love herbs because they're a food, but they're also a medicine. Okay? So we use them to antidote food. So if we want to make something more digestible, we're going to add spices to it, like hot spices, which are going to make things more digestible. So we all know that chili makes you hot, but also it gets your circulation moving. So chili has an affinity with circulation, for example. I keep telling people, like, I'm fascinated by black pepper. Black pepper has an affinity for the lungs. So herbs are used to make food taste better, and we use them in small amounts. And then those very same herbs in a concentrated amount are then used for specific purposes. So herbs actually have affinity for different parts of the body. So for example, black pepper. So if you think about black pepper, those little round peppercorns, if I said to you, describe black pepper to me, is it hot or cold? Hot. It's hot. Mm-hmm. So what black pepper does is it dries up mucus in the body. And so, for example, when so many people have come to me going, oh, I've got a cold, and I'm like, okay, take a tablespoon of black pepper, 2 liters of water, bring it to a boil, let it simmer for 15 minutes, let it sit there. And then after, pour it in a cup, add some honey, drink it, and it'll dry up your mucus and your cold will be gone. So it's this idea that initially how Ayurveda uses herbs is to support the digestive process, to support what we call Agni, which is either to stimulate appetite. So you would take a herb in a concentrated amount before a meal to stimulate appetite. And that's for people who are like, I don't get hungry, I don't know when I'm hungry. Or taken after a meal, and just simplify it to actually support digestion and absorption and actually remove toxins from the body. So the by-process of digestion. So this is what's really beautiful about herbs. And the thing about them is that they deserve our attention. So one herb can do many, many things. And the confusion is that if you pick up a book and you're like, oh, black pepper, it's hot, it works on mucus, it works on the lungs, it's really good for asthma, there'll be 10 things there. And I know I'm kind of digressing here. You kind of have to know what you want to use something for or what your intention is. So the idea is that for the first time ever, there's all this information about herbs online, and you can go and you can find information, but if you don't have a direct relationship with the herbs, or you don't understand what you're actually using it for, then you're going to use it and it's kind of hit or miss. Does that make sense? So I always say to my students that you have to have an intention for the herbs. Just an example, because it's winter and your listeners might resonate with this. So my husband caught a cold and he's flown off to LA, and I kind of went into the kitchen and I went, okay, ginger, cinnamon, and licorice. And I made him a tea of ginger, cinnamon, and licorice, equal amounts. I happen to have all of these things, but you can just do ginger and cinnamon. And he's just like, I don't know what you've done to me, but I'm like, you've got to drink this. I made him a thermos of the tea, and he was drinking it all the time, like a little cup, drinking a little cup, 2 times, twice in 1 hour, because we want it to go away. And his mucus went away, his cold subsided, and he healed. So I'm like, this is ginger. You can go out to the store and buy ginger and peel it and grate it, and you can just make ginger tea and add some honey. And that's something that's going to increase circulation and help ward off colds. So that's the power. And something like ginger is known as universal medicine. And the reason is that it is mild. We've been using it for thousands of years, and it's well tolerated by lots and lots of people. And that's the beauty of it. Cinnamon, we know, for example, and I will stop after cinnamon. We know that now they're like, oh, it's really good for, diabetes. Oh, no, blood sugar, sorry, not diabetes. And that's powerful, but it's also, if you take it in higher doses, and I'm not recommending anyone does it now, over a period of time, stops cramping for young women who are having PMS. So the same herb can support like pain in the body. And that's the thing that I'm just like, holy cow, there are these herbs in the kitchen that if we need to get back to this idea of like starting to use them as first medicine. And the reason is because the body knows what to do with them.
Yes, that makes perfect sense. And I guess we've lost some of, because when I hear you speak, it reminds me of my own grandmother, who seemed
it is grandma's medicine. Beautiful,
huge knowledge of all of these things, and I feel we've lost some of that knowledge.
It's still there though.
It's still there. It's just bringing it back. I guess we, one of the criticisms I've heard about herbs is there's no guarantee, so for example, there's or maybe the speed of impact, and I'd love your view on this, because sometimes, for example, if you have a cold, there are drugs that you could take that could have an impact on that cold, or you could take some of the more natural herbs. It depends on the speed. And is it true that
no, it's not true? People don't know how to use herbs properly, because remember I said to you, it's a question of dosing. Okay, so it's a question of dosing. So if someone has, for example, like we all know, like my husband was saying to me the other day, why aren't you giving me echinacea and golden seal? And I said, because you don't need echinacea and golden seal. I can give you this. So when you have something, so let's go back. In Western medicine, and again, no critique, in Western medicine, we have been taught you have a problem, you take a pill, and the pill does the work for you. So we've been conditioned into thinking, take one thing and it's going to do the work and I don't have to do anything. What we also know is that the problem with a lot of medicine that is given to us is that there are secondary effects. So it's going to fix one part of the body, but it could hurt the other part of the body. So number one, herbs don't have side effects. These are culinary spices that we're talking about. So we've been using them for thousands of years, and they're generally well tolerated. Unless, of course, you run hot, and like I do, and you take chili and you then have this heat reaction. I'm like, okay, chili's not the herb for me. I need to find something else. So that's number one. So herbs are well tolerated. But number two, you have to take them consistently. So I just gave the example of a cold. Let's just say you have a scratchy, dry throat, because this is easy, and I would make a turmeric paste. So what that means is I take a tablespoon of very good quality organic turmeric, put it in a cup, add hot water, mix it and make a paste. And then after that's cooled down, I add honey to it, raw honey. We don't want to mix raw honey with hot water. Make a paste. Now that turmeric, in order for it to work, I need to take, this is what I do, 1 to 2 teaspoons every half hour for that first day when I can feel my throat hurting. And then, just like magic, I'm better. So you've got to take it consistently. What's the word for it? You've got to take it. So in an hour, maybe I take a lot because I've been trained that way. So I'm not scared about dosing. Nothing's going to happen to you. But you can't just take a turmeric pill. I'm talking about, let's say, 1 teaspoon of turmeric every half hour for a couple of days.
You're like blitzing it, aren't you? Yeah,
you have to blitz it, because herbs are food, and foods are well tolerated by the body. But when you're using food as medicine, you have to take higher doses of it.
Got it. So if you've got that's interesting. So you can use it just in your cooking and those types of things.
Cooking is different to medicine. And this is because I train people, cooking is different to medicine. Medicine, we use higher doses of herbs. However, again, when you go online, they're too scared to tell. This is why you actually need to go and see someone, because online they can't tell you to use large doses of it, because if they do, they could they're opening themselves up to I don't know, being sued or problems. But the reality is, again, turmeric's turmeric. If you want it to treat pain, you have to get it into the body. So we're talking about large doses, and I can speak to turmeric through my own personal experience, where I've woken up at 3 o'clock in the morning I can feel the heat, the scratchy throat. I make a turmeric paste. I'll take a tablespoon, go back to bed, wake up a couple of hours later, take another tablespoon, and then I wake up and it's gone. It's like the burning throat is gone, and I'm like, holy cow, these herbs are powerful. You have to take enough of them. Medicine is different to, this is what I'm saying. Cooking, you're sprinkling the turmeric. People say to me, well, I put turmeric in my food. And I'm like, that's great.
Just not enough. Yeah.
But in winter, if you want to stay healthy, I'm like, take a teaspoon of turmeric, put it in with some honey and a little bit of warm water, and take a shot every day. And so that's a prophylactic. So there's a difference between, it's like your vitamin C or your zinc. You're taking 1 one thing, but you're not, but when you get a cold, they tell you to increase the amount of vitamin C that you're taking to tummy tolerance, because vitamin C can give you the runs. So you have to increase the amount to treat the issue, and then you go back to maintenance levels. That's a really important point.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. You almost increase the levels to almost blitz the problem, and
you have to saturate the body. Yeah. But they're instantaneous. It's some of these herbs they work instantaneously. I was telling you the other day about Sitapaladi, and it's a miracle herb because it stops coughing. But you might take a teaspoon and it doesn't, but then you increase that to a tablespoon and you stop coughing, and you're like, holy cow, these herbs are amazing. And I'm putting, and when you see what's in them, these are all natural substances. And this is the big difference, that natural substances, again, the body knows what to do with it.
I love that. So I'm conscious that a lot of our listeners, our audience at this point in time, the one thing I hear a lot of is that people are feeling exhausted, mentally exhausted. And just from an Ayurvedic point of view, are there any herbs that can really help with energy and helping people to manage their their health, whilst there is a lot of challenge going on in people's lives? I'd love your perspective.
I will talk to you about herbs, but I want to do a caveat first. And the caveat is this: if you use herbs to treat symptoms, you're only going to get so much from them. So the most important thing, I learned this from one of my teachers, and I'm like, is you have to learn to slow down and rest. And this is a difficult thing for people to hear, because this idea is that herbs, if you're using herbs to treat symptoms, and I'm like, yep, you can use ashwagandha, it's a really great herb if you're a vata, if you're a nervous type of person. I'm trying to think of just off that, there are beautiful herbs for the mind, like Brahmi. They've done so much research on Brahmi. It's phenomenal for memory. It calms you down, especially if you're a hothead. So I'm very attracted to herbs like Brahmi and Gotu Kola, and you can buy them off the shelf. You can go to Chemist Warehouse and they're there. However, and I'm going to do my however caveat, if you're using herbs like you would use medicine to calm down your nervous system, and there's nothing else there, you're not doing anything else to support it, then they're only going to be so effective. You'll definitely, people swear by ashwagandha, people swear by Brahmi, Gotu Kola. These are beautiful mind herbs, nervous system herbs. There's a ton more, but I'll just keep it really simple. But we have to start to pay attention to the way that we're living our lives and the way that we're going at 100 miles an hour, because the biggest precursor to all disease is stress. And once again, I'm going to go back to this personal responsibility thing of we have to learn to manage our stress. And that means that every day you have to find a way. I can give you suggestions of learning how to take time and slow down. And so then the thing is that we've been taught to go at 100, I go 100 miles. Sorry, I lived in the US for 100 kilometers an hour. And we're like full speed. And then bang, we hit a wall, we collapse, we get a cold, we get sick, and we're like, okay, I have to rest now. That doesn't work, because we're an all or nothing. And it's not that we're just physically doing that. We don't know how to switch off our minds. And it's like, we're in bed and the phone, and the first thing we do is we scroll through our phone. And so we have to learn how to self-regulate. And this is the biggest thing that Ayurveda, I think, when we talk about the science of life, it's like, learn how to go through life at a speed that works for you. And so Ayurveda talks about these three qualities to nature. And I always like to use the Goldilocks and the three bears. Too hot, which is too hot, too fast. Too cold, which is when we're really slowing down, and just right. And health is when you find the just right for you. And that's dependent on many things. Younger people are going to go faster. Older people are like, been there, done that. I'm going to go slower. But you have to find, if you want longevity and health, then everything has to be done in moderation.
Yeah.
And that's an interesting word that we have to think about because it's philosophical as well as like practical. So yes, you can take the herbs, but the herbs always work well when they're supported by diet and lifestyle.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. So it's really an integrated lifestyle
it's
strategy
integrated.
that we need. So just to play back what I heard is, if our goal is to not only live long but also to live in a healthy way. So if we want to get to 100, but we want to be well, throughout that journey, then we almost need to look at what we do on a daily basis to support our bodies, our minds, and our spirits.
And we have to remember that it doesn't mean we don't achieve things, that we don't have goals, that we don't have fun, that we do all of those things. But we learn to do them in a way that's balanced, so more kind of like drawing things to us rather than rushing towards things and pushing. And, everyone, like, trust me, I've pushed and pushed and pushed. So everyone, you learn and you're like, okay, I have to go at a different speed. And this is what I'm saying, that the herbs and the food work well when they're combined with with the lifestyle stuff. And what I really want to stress to people is my personal journey has been one of growing into this stuff. This is not about perfection. This is not because people go, oh my God, I've got to do all these things to stay healthy. No, I'm not asking anyone to do that. I'm asking people to think about their health, think about what it means for them, think about like, what are the things that you do on a daily basis to support that? And I'm sure we all do, people exercise, people, read good books, they eat good food. But the most important thing is like, what's that inner thing that's propelling you? What's your rate of speed? And if you're going too fast until you slam up against a wall and then you're on the couch exhausted, that's the repercussions of that are not great.
No, I get that. Thank you very much for sharing that. And that kind of brings us on to kind of the last question that I ask all of my guests. This is the Finding Equilibrium show, and you've just talked about balance. But I'd love to know what finding equilibrium means to you as a concept.
Sure. Well, I've learned the hard way, haven't I? I've done all the things wrong. For me, it's really been a process of slowing down and going inwards. I feel extremely fortunate in that I've created a life where I can, I have rituals where I meditate every day. I don't even know if it's meditation. I just go inwards and kind of, spend time breathing and relaxing and kind of visualizing what I want and giving gratitude. I have been a student of yoga, so the asana aspect, the physical postures, since I was in my 20s. And I swear that what that does is it moves energy through the body. And I'd love to tell you that I do it every single day, but I don't. But I'm committed to my practice and I'm doing it, it depends. Some weeks I do it every day. Some weeks I do it 3 times a week, but there's never a week that goes by when I don't do it. I'm fascinated by food and herbs. I started off by saying I love to eat. And so I'm fascinated by using food, but I'm really concerned about food from its natural. So I want real food as much as possible. And in my ideal world, I'd have a garden and I would grow everything, but I live in an apartment. So I go to the farmers markets and I have a relationship with the people that, with the vendors that are there. And that's a ritual for me where I go to the markets every Saturday and I buy food and then I'll look up recipes and I'll cook that food. And so I'm very much into plant-based recipes and really making them taste good. I would say that. And then I'm a student. So I will be studying and learning and, filling just learning for the rest of my life because I'm fascinated by this stuff. I just think and I think you said something beautiful, that this is grandma's medicine. So what that means is that every single one of us, women were the healers before doctors came around. And I mean, we're glad they're here, but women healed their families. They were the first. So this idea of you know, kind of connecting to nature and just to things that are natural as much as possible.
Yeah, I love that. And just underlining and echoing everything you said, it really feels like if we can get the two systems working together, grandma's medicine and Western medicine.
Yes, well, that's how they should. Yeah.
Then we've got the perfect system in balance. So Eleni, thank you so much for spending time with us today, sharing your knowledge, sharing your wisdom. That was incredibly helpful. I could speak to you for another 3 hours, I'm sure. But
and you know, I could do it.
But where can people find out more about you? Maybe book in for a consult with you. Where
the best place for me right now is Eleniayurveda. So my first name, Eleni Ayurveda @me.com. That would be the best place. My current website is called Belly Mind Institute. It's a work in progress. I'm changing it. You can follow me on Facebook, Eleni Ayurveda. I'm going to post my 2 recipes the 2 yummy things that I cooked this week.
Okay.
Yeah, that's where I'm at.
I'll put all of those things in the show notes. But thank you so much. Let me acknowledge you, Eleni, for everything you've done to really build such a vast well of knowledge. I mean, it really is so deep, and as you said right at the start, it all makes sense, and you realise that we've made being healthy something that seems very complicated. Whereas if you just go right back to first principles, then you achieve what you're looking for, which is good health and longevity and all the things that provides. So thank you so much, Eleni, and I will see you next time. And thank you everyone for your time, for your attention, and we will see you next time.